Hello, everybody. It's Alex from the Remote Work Life podcast, and I have a special guest with me today. I have Darcy Boles, who is a friend, one of the founding members of the Remote Work Life podcast. I met Darcy back in 2019. I can't believe it was 3 years ago since I met Darcy. But Darcy is remote through and through. When you talk about remote first, Darcy is the human representation of remote work, as far as I'm concerned. She lives and breathes remote work, and as I said, Darcy is a friend of the Remote Work Life podcast. She's experienced in head of remote roles and responsibilities, culture architecture, and remote first experience design. She helps founders and people teams identify, organize, and codify people-focused, remote-first processes to create a win-win working experience for all. Darcy, thank you so much for coming back onto the Remote Worker podcast. As always, you're very welcome. Nice to see you.
So good to see you, Alex. I know when we first jumped on this call, I was like, I can't believe it's been so long. And I feel like I've known you for so much longer. So I'm really, really happy to be back, especially after these last 3 years of just such a shift in how the world works remotely.
And as I said, we're happy to have you back. And like I said, I can't believe it's been 3 years. Time, it's funny because time can go so quickly, but at the same time, in that period that we were in, it just seemed to go so slowly, you know. But
Yeah.
And as we said before we got into the call, so much has changed since then. I think things are beginning to settle down a little bit in the sense that you're getting people who have made their decision on which direction they want to go in terms of remote or not. And you're very much at the forefront of things where a remote work is concerned, and also very much a strong advocate of remote work, which I love. And things have changed for you since we last spoke as well, haven't they, Darcy? Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So after about 4 amazing years as the Director of Culture and Innovation at TaxJar, which was a fully remote SaaS company, we went through an amazing acquisition into Stripe Payments, so the biggest kind of payments platform in the world. And, at that time, it was about 2021, and everyone was saying, oh, wow, okay, the job that you did at a fully remote company is real. And now we've decided to go fully remote. And so kind of the demand for my skill set was really there. And I wanted to be able to help more people really kind of figure out their way and the way forward for their culture and their remote experience. And I think that that's been a really unique thing over this transition to consultancy is, really taking that thought process that there's no blueprint for remote work. That's what I love about it. I love to build, and there's no right way for a specific culture. So it's really about understanding who you are and who you want to be as a culture, and then designing the way forward in this new world of work very intentionally so it works for you and your culture. And so I now help companies do that.
No, it's great. And one thing, and I think you'll realize this, everybody's watching or listening, I just love Darcy's passion for her work. As I said, very strong advocate for remote work. And not just that, you're a strong advocate for people and making people's lives better. That's how I see you. You're the kind of person for me, you want to make people's lives better. And when I read your posts on LinkedIn, that is at the center. It's not remote work. It's people. It's making people's lives better. And isn't that what you're about, Darcy?
Absolutely. At my core, sure. And remote work is a vessel for that, right? And I think that that's really where my core sits, and my background's in hospitality and really creating places for people to belong. And that is exactly what I'm trying to do. I feel like if we can focus on autonomy and belonging for each individual to have agency over their own lives, to do the things that fill their cup, we will have such a better world. But we also create spaces for them to belong and connect, because human connection is one of our deepest psychological needs. And the ability to do that with on a global scale now with remote work you're exactly right. It hits that deep sole goal of mine to just make the world a better place, each individual at a time. And that the vessel for me is through remote work.
And if I remember rightly, when we first spoke, you were at TaxJar, but you hadn't you hadn't necessarily worked in a remote first business before, but you've done a lot of the things that that you know remote first businesses do in terms of the communication, in terms of the tools, in terms of people, and you made that transition into remote work, and you were at TaxJar for a good while. You got your promotions. You worked your way up, and that's. But what you do now is a lot different. It's a lot different now. You've taken the jump into consultancy, whereas before you were employed. But in terms of the difference for you, what how do you decide that you wanted to move away from being in a great company like TaxJar, where you built all these great relationships and you built a great team and it's a great business. How did you make that decision that you wanted to make that shift?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I loved my team so much. I think part of it for me is I really thrive, and I just know this about myself, working in early stage startups. And we grew up with the acquisition. We grew up and we moved into a different space. And for me, I wanted to come back to sort of my roots of really working closely with founders, really working closely with early stage people teams because I saw how much success we had at TaxJar from starting this intentionality so early in the process. I was hired 25 to really own this process, this remote first, people first culture. And so I sort of think of it like preventative healthcare. It's almost like if a remote company gets to a certain size remotely, it's really hard if they haven't set it up intentionally to work well asynchronously and to create belonging to course correct. It's like 100 times harder and 100 times more expensive if you pass about 150 people without doing that. And so I wanted to kind of come back to this incubation stage and help people set it up in a way that they know is going to work for them, that's flexible enough to shift as their business model may change or the environment may change, but really codify that culture early so it's communicated early, people understand the environment early. Because I'm not a big change management person. I can do it and I do enjoy it at times. I'm working on a change management project right now, but my heart is in just doing things well and with intention early on. Foundation.
And I think that makes total sense because I've spoken to people who've experienced, you know, not just during the pandemic, but businesses that have just thought that they could make that switch from being working, in office, synchronous, and then make a switch. Give a few people a few laptops, a few dongles. Get some of the IT and tech set up,
Right.
and then there you go, sort of thing. But it just doesn't work like that. It's like you say, it has to be. Everybody has to be on board with it, don't they? They have to be. You have to think. I don't know. For me, it makes sense to me that you can't just expect your team to be able to switch from one to another. So like you said, it's about getting those foundations in place from the get-go, so that everybody's on, and also getting people or having people who are aligned with it as well. And that's very much part of your work, isn't it? And tell us about your yourself as a consultant. What kind of projects that you've worked on so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done a few remote first kind of readiness audits. So those are really for companies. I've been working a lot, and I think this is also just has to do with the time that we're in right now. There's so many companies that went emergency remote, remote reactionary because of the pandemic. And now they're realizing that they've repeated the office behaviors in a remote environment. And exactly like you said, it's not working. People are burned out, they're exhausted, they're living on Slack all day, they're having nightmares of the Slack ding in their sleep. No one knows how to use schedule send. It's just like they don't know how to use the tools for that. That's okay. It's to be expected. And I want to like honor that, like, that's okay to be bad at it because you've never done it before. Like, I think that's really important. So I've had people call me a remote work therapist, which has been really funny. But I really focused on kind of really identifying. I created a very cohesive deep dive audit of kind of a remote maturity scale of kind of, okay, you know, you're a highly synchronous culture. You want to get to asynchronous. Let's identify the gaps that you'll need to close and the behavior change that we'll need to really model to get there. Setting realistic timelines. I've also helped companies hire for a head of remote. So my network is very much in that space. And so companies are ready to do that. It's a lot of different things, mostly because we're in a market that requires a lot of different types of remote kind of consultancy. And so I have everything from head of remote to kind of 1-800, oh my gosh, we just went remote, we need your brain, consulting. So that's really the space that I've been in, which has been really fascinating and fun. And, you know, I actually bought the other day, I don't know if there'll be a video on this podcast as well, but I bought myself some lab goggles and a lab coat, because whenever I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just like, well, nobody does in this world, so I'm just going to be a scientist of this. And I just put them on and I dive in.
We need it. We need that because there's so much. I mean, again, there's still a lot of confusion where remote work is concerned, and I see it on my side where companies, for example, they advertise jobs, and they say, you know, remote. And then before you know it, they're saying, you know, 2 days here in the office or 3 days in the office. And I still think there's lots of confusion being, not necessarily always intentionally.
No.
You know, are you finding that as well? There's sort of a lot of confusion around it.
Absolutely. I think the number one thing that comes up for me is there is just simply a lack of clarity and codification of who people are and who they want to be as a cohesive company. And that work hasn't had to be done because the container was always the office, right? Like there was a container that held that culture and that communication. And I think that there's going to be a big need for internal communications managers in the next, and knowledge management in the next few years. I really see just kind of the lack of having somebody own this clarity process with founders, with leadership teams to say, this is fine if you want 2 days in the office. No problem. That's your collective decision, but you have to make that decision, because not making that decision is incredibly expensive, emotionally and financially. And candidates are going through a bait and switch. And sometimes it's just about the first step is just deciding what you want to be and where you want to go. And I would say that's just the number one step for founders and anyone listening out there right now that is in a leadership decision-making position, is just make a decision. People will self-select out of your culture that aren't aligned with that. You want that. That is good for your business. And people will self-select in who want it.
And it's like you said, the cost is real, not just to their reputation, but the bottom line. And I mean, in my coaching sessions with clients that I have, the cost to them is essentially, like you were referring to, is unhappiness and kind of confusion and not feeling a sense of belonging, and which is why, yeah, somebody like you got, Darcy, is so important to actually be able to help people to codify what they're about, so before they can actually go out there and then start to talk about what they do and how they do it and who they work with and hire people, all this sort of thing. So yeah, what you do is so important. And like I said, I love your passion for it. And everybody, you should really, if you look up Darcy online, you're very active on LinkedIn, Darcy.
LinkedIn, definitely. Yeah.
And tell us your website as well. I'll leave that in the show notes, but tell us where's the best place to find the website.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I love meeting new people on LinkedIn. And as you can tell, I love people. And my website is shiftwithdarcymarie.com.
So I'll leave that in the show notes for everybody to listen out for. But what I wanted to get into a bit more is, because like I said, that was 3 years ago that we met. I didn't really dive deep into this area of your life, but I wanted to. Where does that? I wanted to know where that passion comes from. Where does that fire for what you do come from? Because there's lots of people that I speak to who, who they long to have the clarity in terms of the direction of their career. They long to have that clarity in terms of how they can, I guess, help others as well. How did you find that yourself? Where does that all come from? Where does that passion come from?
So great question. So I'll go back to early childhood. My parents are much older than me. My mom had me at 40 and my dad was 45. And so I was also an only child. And so I was an only child with much older parents than anyone I knew. And I was very fortunate to travel a lot as a kid. But I kind of just moved through the world at my own pace because I didn't really have like brothers or sisters or younger parents, or my parents didn't have friends that had kids my age. And so I sort of had to discover things on my own. And I would just like, I just learned how to talk to anybody. Like I would make friends with like an 80-year-old butcher, and I would like my babysitter was a 65-year-old retired guy named Zeke. And we'd like go to the grocery store and look at the lobsters. Like I had a very sort of strange, unique childhood. I think that makes sense. But I think that has a lot to do with why I'm so passionate about this. I would just connect with all of these different types of people from all over the world from such a young age. And I just saw how like amazing human connection was and how good that made me feel. But also, I've never been in like a 9 to 5 very well. Like I've never functioned very well in the constructs of the world. My elementary school, I took whales classes where I'd put Crisco on my arms. I'd learn how to feel like what it was like to have blubber. Like I just kind of grew up in this like really interesting hippie environment, for lack of a better word. And it really shaped my mind into, I think, seeing things in a different way and always sort of rejecting status quo, rejecting constructs, rejecting anything that felt rigid has just been something that's always been in me because I saw the freedom that people can have and the impact that they have when they're kind of released from that construct.
And I think that's like you said, it's to be the consultant that you are, the worker that you are. It does take a different way of thinking. It takes creativity. It takes like I said, I keep saying this word passion that you have, that you emit through the posts on LinkedIn or whatever it may be, to actually get those. But I suppose actually another question that just springs to my mind is, so knowing what you or coming from the background that you came from, you worked in an office. What was it that made you sort of realize that this is not for me?
Yeah. That's a tough one. I mean, I worked in an office for a while for a company that I dearly loved, but their head office was located in San Francisco, and all of the larger career opportunities were in the office in San Francisco. And I'm a fairly highly sensitive person. I don't function well in cities. Like I know that about myself. Doing a really kind of tough job and like tech forward job while in an environment that's also very busy, like doesn't work for me. I actually don't do very good work and I get super anxious. And so that was really the moment where I was like, I don't want to have to move to San Francisco and like live in an environment that doesn't support the work that I want to do in order to be able to continue my career path.
Mm-hmm. And well, similar with me, I had this, I guess it was an anxiety of being, because when I started my career, a lot of the roles that I had, well, I'm in London now, but most of the roles I had was in the city, the sort of centre of London, and at a time when open planned offices were sort of like really,
Same,
yeah,
same.
you know.
Yep.
And back then, I didn't actually realise then. I do now, because when I look, when you reflect, you kind of think, what was it about that workplace, or what was it about that situation that made me feel that way? But when I reflect, I realise now that I felt really quite intimidated by that open planned arrangement.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be there for the camaraderie and the team spirit, and so that everybody could feel together. But for me, it had the opposite effect, and it kind of
Yeah.
made me realise this is just not for me. I can't. But I actually didn't know what to do, because like I said, it was a fashionable thing. It's still quite fashionable now. It's like having these open plan settings. It just drained the life out of me, because for me, as much as I work a lot in teams. We do still work a lot in teams. We get together a lot. There's certain types of work that I like to just sort of focus in. Are you the same way? You sort of like a certain
Yes.
work that you just prefer to focus, yeah?
Exactly. Like I'm like, if I need to do certain tasks, I need nobody around me. I need headphones on, like in a very private space. It's how I function very well. And similar, like the open office plan was a big part of our office, and to know, I don't think it was anybody's fault. It was kind of the trend at the time. And I get why it existed, but I think similar to you, I don't think I really knew how it was affecting me. Also at the time, being so exposed, and I'll be a little vulnerable here, like I actually went $30,000 into debt and started
Mm-hmm.
drinking way too much
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to keep up with like the style of everybody. And like I'd go visit the San Francisco office and people had their Teslas, and I was just like, okay, so to belong, I need to look a certain way or be a certain way because I'm so exposed all the time, and there's wine in the cafeteria, and so I'm going to sit and have 3 glasses of wine. That's how I'm going to bond after work. And I just kind of, again, I don't think it was at any fault of the company. I just don't think I realized how I wasn't self-aware enough at the time to kind of set those boundaries and understand when and where I worked best, because I didn't really have a choice of when and where I worked best. It was required to be in the office.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because again, I felt as well drawn along, in a sense, not how can I put this? I felt as though, yeah, same as you. I had to be one of the workers and go for drinks, and
Yeah.
you felt compulsion just to just really fit in, rather than sort of, and I wasn't myself. I wasn't being myself, and I wasn't completely happy myself in that situation. As much as it was a great company, and there were people within that company who were thriving. There were people who were doing
So
really
yeah.
well, and that's because that sort of environment suited them. It didn't suit me. It suited them, and that's why they were. And that's the way. That's, for me, is when you have that realization, which again you did. It's liberating, isn't it? When you begin to really think to yourself, actually, this is what I prefer. I prefer to work this way. These are the kind of people I'm drawn towards. It's liberating, and it seems like you're on that path now, where you just totally know yourself. You know what you want. You know what you're good at. You know where you want to go. That's how you appear to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know what I don't know, right? Like I'm learning every day, and I think life is a journey of self-discovery, and thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I think being the person I grew up as and the friends I've surrounded myself with, like, my fiance and I are never having children. For our honeymoon, we're going to Madeira and renting a Land Cruiser and driving across the island. We've lived in a truck together. Like, we just sort of live a different type of lifestyle. And that's just something I want to express in my work, to kind of give people the permission of whatever life you want to live is great, but like remote work can be a vessel for that life. And that's really what unlocked for me from the really transitioning and getting to know myself at rock bottom in an open office, and kind of cleaning up my act and being like, who are you, Darce? And who do you want to be? Because you got one of these lives. And like, learning how I work best is only going to benefit the teams I work with. And I'm going to have to self-select out of an environment where I don't work best, which was super hard because I loved the people who were there. It was an amazing company. And so it's really about, and I see this with so many newer remote workers and people who have sort of started this transition into the remote space. It's really a journey of, at its core, self-actualization. And I'm not there, but like it's a practice.
It is. That's the perfect representation of it. It's self-actualization, and I think there's still a bit of work to be done on the side of a lot of work to be done on the side of businesses who are hiring. I mean, again, my perspective, when I look at all the job descriptions online, you still see the same kinds of words and the same kinds of marketing, which is going to attract basically the same kind of person. There's not enough thought into, writing an advert that attracts somebody who works in this way, and that's probably because there's a confusion on their part in terms of their own identity, in terms of their own sort of.
Yes.
That's probably where you were talking about the foundation. The foundational stuff is not right. So then, if the foundational stuff is not right, how are you then going to sort of attract people who are aligned with your values, with the way that you work? But yeah, remote work is definitely not just remote work, but life, I suppose, in general is about self-actualization. And for you now, it seems like you're just in your flow. Like I said, when I read your posts I love reading your posts on LinkedIn.
Oh, thanks.
Love it. And for you now, is there a typical day for you with the work that you do at the moment, or how do you organize your day?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in my flow. I'm still in this experimentation of consulting and, who I'm driving the best with and where I'm able to make the best impact and get the most energy from. And I think that, a typical day for me, I've had to really ground myself not being in a kind of full-time job and in a team. And so I've actually started bucketing my days. So I do well. I don't do well with a rigid structure, but I do well with kind of some swim lanes, right? Like just like any company does. And so I have like theme days. So like Monday and Tuesday are client days. So I'm all in client work. I'm connecting with my clients. And then Wednesdays are connect day. So Wednesdays I do connection. I catch up with, other remote professionals, other consultants, friends. It's just kind of my day to focus on connecting. And Thursdays are client and connect day. So they're today's Thursday. So I have this podcast with you, Alex, and then I have client work right after this, and I had client work beforehand. And then Fridays are my business admin day. So it's kind of like tax filing, all the admin stuff that needs to happen to run a business. And so I've bucketed my days and color coded my calendar so I just have some sort of direction to stay focused on kind of those things. And each day my morning starts with breath work every morning at 6 a.m. with my breathwork collective online. And then I go on a walk with my golden retriever. And then after that, I usually dive into work. Sometimes I'll work out. It depends. But those two things are key to every day for me.
Love it. I think I need to take a leaf out of your book with the physical. I still don't do enough physical stuff. I still end up sitting at my desk for far too long. Still do it. But I like the way you've sort of.
Do you have a dog? Get a dog.
Well, I'm more of a cat man, I'm more of a cat person.
Oh, got it.
But besides that, I need to get out. I really do. And that's the thing. We talk about being intentional. We talk about discovering yourself. I think that's what remote work has done for me. It's helped me to not just and it sounds like it's done for you as well. It's helped me to understand who I am, but what I need to do as well with
Yeah.
my life, with my career as well. And what I want to know, I know because you've got your client course coming up, so I want to know from you, Darcy, what are the plans for the future then? What does the future hold for Darcy?
That's such a good question. On such a journey of my own blueprint of life at the moment. I mean, as I mentioned kind of before we started recording, like I'm getting married in 2 months. I'm stepping into being a wife, and I'm kind of stepping into this next season of life. I'm loving parts of consulting, and then there are parts that I don't think I'm super great at or might not be my zone of genius. So maybe I'll have a partner at some point at work. I do know that at the core of everything I do, there is such a deep lens of hospitality, and where hospitality meets remote work and creating that magical experience from hire to retire on a global scale. And so I don't know where those two things are married yet, but I do know that I have a vision for the future, really in blending those two worlds to make sure that when people are joining a remote first company, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel like they're assimilated to the culture, they feel like they're on a shared trip and a shared journey every day they log in, because their experiences outside of that virtual environment are their own, and they're their own different experiences. And so whatever I can do to really create that really hospitable experience for a remote worker to feel connected and engaged, so the company therefore also gets amazing profits and happy employees, I want to create that win-win for everybody. So right now it's in consulting. It may stay in consulting, but I'm just continuing to put on my lab coat and learn.
Well, Darcy, we need you. You're a valued part of this whole remote community. Keep doing what you're doing. As I said, we need what you're doing. And please, if you're listening or when you listen to this, please go across to Darcy's website, shiftwithdarcymarie.com. Check out the website, and check out Darcy's LinkedIn as well. And if you're looking for remote consulting, a remote first consultant, then Darcy is where you should look first. So
Hit me
Darcy, I
up.
want to say thank you. Thank you so much. Good to see you again. And let's keep in touch, and let's see where the next step takes you.
Thanks so much, Alex. It was awesome to reconnect with you.